All right, I think that we have just about everyone, and more people are going to be coming through in just a little bit. But first things first, welcome. My name is John McLaughlin. I'm Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management and the Dean of Admission here at Hamilton College. And we're really excited to welcome you to tonight's program, Virtually Hamilton, Hamilton's Generous Financial Aid Promise. This is part of a series of virtual programs that we offer over the past months and upcoming months. And we're really excited for today's topic because we know that there's a lot of interest, a lot of questions about financial aid and the resources that we make available. It's incredible to see this group here in this Zoom room. We have people that are beaming in from all across the country. I see Wyoming, I see Washington State, New York, of course, and people from all around the world, Egypt and Nepal, France, Ghana. We're so appreciate you taking some time to spend some time with us and learn a little bit more about Hamilton, about our incredible financial aid. I'm joined tonight by my friend and colleague, Jan Scheutzow, Hamilton's Executive Director of Financial Aid. Jan has worked in the financial aid field for almost 20 years, and she's well-versed in assisting students and families throughout the financial aid process. During tonight's conversation, Jan's going to demystify the process of applying for aid. She'll talk about our generous resources, provide some guidelines and financing options for you and your family to think about as you consider this important investment. In a moment, Jan will talk a little bit about her own background and her role on the Hill. But first, I also want to introduce a couple of other colleagues that are working behind the scenes and thank them for their support. This includes J.D. Ross, Associate Dean of Admission, who will be answering admissions-related questions in the Q&A, and Marianne Atkinson, our Associate Director for Financial Aid. Both will be answering questions in the Q&A function and sharing questions that we can answer live as well. So as your questions come up, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions during the presentation, and we'll address them later in tonight's program. Also, for those of you that are interested, we have our closed captioning is available for this program tonight, and you can find that option available for you as well at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we're really excited to have you join us tonight, and I'm really excited to introduce and turn it over to my colleague and friend, Jan Scheutzow. Jan, over to you.
Great, John. Thank you so much. And thank you for that kind intro. Good evening, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Thank you, John, for that introduction. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight as I share some highlights of Hamilton's very generous financial aid promise. We promise to meet 100% of our accepted and enrolled students' demonstrated need every year for all 4 years of their enrollment. And in addition to our generous financial aid policy, we practice need-blind admissions for our first-year domestic students, meaning a family's ability to pay our Hamilton tuition and fees will not be a factor in their application review process. I will share we are need-aware, meaning a family's ability to pay Hamilton tuition and fees will be considered for our transfer and international students, but we still promise to meet 100% of their need during enrollment. We are proud to share that we are one of the few colleges in the country to offer both a need-blind admissions policy and meeting 100% of our students' demonstrated need. I hope to share that Hamilton is very committed to providing opportunity to our students, and I'm happy to share our commitment to financial aid tonight. Our conversation will begin with me sharing the financial aid language. We tend to use many acronyms and terms in our financial aid world, and I wanted to highlight a few of those main ones that will determine your student's financial need. After we discuss our common terminology, I'll review how we determine students' financial need and how we meet that financial need throughout their enrollment at Hamilton College. I'll also offer some FAFSA and CSS Profile insight. You may have heard there are some changes within the FAFSA application process, and I'm happy to share some details about that with you tonight. And then we will definitely make time for all your questions at the end. So to begin with our terminology, TFC, or Total Family Contribution, is a very common acronym that we use in our world. and it's a key component to determine a student's financial need. I'd like to share at this point in time, it's important to note that all need-based financial aid policies begin with the assumption that the family is the primary contributor toward a student's educational expenses, and the TFC is the amount the family is expected to pay. The total family contribution is comprised of a student contribution and a parent contribution. For us to understand what resources are available for the family to contribute, we ask all students that are interested in applying for financial aid to complete a FAFSA, or free application for federal student aid, and the College Board CSS Profile each year. As a student, we're entering the fall 2024 academic year, we ask that you use your 2022 tax return information as you complete these applications. Each FAFSA and profile will use a complex individual methodology to determine the family contribution number, but some common questions you'll see on these applications include the student income and assets, the parent income and assets, the non-custodial income and assets as applicable, the number of people in the household, and the number of people in college. All are factors in determining a family's total contribution number. You may have also heard that the FAFSA is changing some of their methodology to not consider multiple students in college, and I'm happy to share that Hamilton will continue to honor that reduced contribution for multiple students in college. In addition to TFC, or total family contribution, another key component to determine a student's financial need is called COA, or cost of attendance. And the annual cost of attendance at college includes direct costs, indirect costs, and the combination of the two equal the total COA. So your direct costs will include tuition, housing, meals, student activity fee, and health insurance. Indirect costs are also included in the COA, even though they're not billed to you or billable charges. They include an allowance for books and supplies, transportation, and personal miscellaneous expenses that the student may incur while being a student in college. It's helpful that we include both the direct and indirect costs because it allows us to provide need-based aid to help contribute to some of those out-of-pocket expenses like buying books and traveling back and forth from campus to home each semester. So the financial aid, to determine the student's financial need, we use both the COA and the total family contribution. Here's an example. The common formula is the cost of attendance minus the total family contribution equals the student's demonstrated need. And I'm very proud and happy to share that Hamilton promises to meet 100% of that demonstrated need. So our financial aid offer will include multiple sources of aid to add up to $70,000. That is an example of meeting 100%. Some colleges, however, are not as do not have the ability to meet 100% need, and they may offer aid to a sum less than the demonstrated need. And in this example, as a $63,000 offer is only 90% of a student's need, that term is called gapping in our world. But I'm proud to say again that Hamilton College does not gap any of our students' financial need. We are meeting 100% every single year. So let's share an example of how we do this. So we're going to start with this example of a cost of attendance of $80,000. And this family's contribution example is $10,000. So the student has demonstrated need of $70,000. And Hamilton College is going to create a financial aid offer to include mostly Hamilton Scholarship of $64,000. And we also include self-help aid, which is considered student employment and student loan. Employment averages around $2,400, and student loan as a freshman or incoming first-year student is $3,500. And you will see all three sources add up to our commitment of $70,000 of need-based aid. We do include loans in our financial aid offers along with student employment to meet need because we believe they are important self-help aid that the student has some buy-in on this process. And our loans are always limited to the annual dollar amount according to federal student loan amounts. And you will see here as an incoming freshman, our typical loan amount is $3,500. It will increase a little bit each year. Sophomore level is $4,500, and then it levels out in junior and senior year at $5,500. You can see on the screen that the student has ability to borrow a little bit more in additional unsubsidized loan of $2,000 each year if they need to help contribute towards the family contribution a little bit more. I'd like to share that these loans are in the student's name only, that the FAFSA is their gateway to their access to borrowing in the federal student loan program, and none of these loans have to be paid while the student is in school. They are all deferred until the student graduates, and then they have a 6-month grace period before repayment begins. So just to recap some of the things that we talked about already, we talked about common acronyms and terms that we use in our financial aid world, primarily TFC, total family contribution, that is determined from the FAFSA and the CSS Profile, and COA, cost of attendance, which is used to determine the student's demonstrated need. We've also talked about the term demonstrated need and how we ask our financial aid applicants to complete the profile and the FAFSA every single year and send us supporting documentation to verify that, so we can truly verify the student's demonstrated need each year with 1040s, business tax returns, and W-2s as applicable. And then we also talked about how Hamilton continues to meet 100% of demonstrated need as opposed to gap our students. We do not do any gapping of their need at all. I mentioned early on in our first slide, when it eventually came up, I apologize, that we are need blind in our admissions process versus need aware. We are need blind for our domestic first year students, but we are need aware for our transfer students and our international students. And you have more information about our need policies, need admission policies on the link there listed on the slide. So now we're going to move on into how a student applies for financial aid. As I mentioned earlier, we ask that they complete 2 common financial aid applications, one being the FAFSA and the second being the CSS Profile. So let's begin with the FAFSA. The term, actually, free application for federal student aid. And free is a key word on this slide. You should not be paying or submitting a credit card to complete your FAFSA at all, or any manner at all. The website, the correct website that you need to visit to complete the FAFSA is studentaid.gov. And you'll know that as you continue through the financial aid process in future years, that the key Department of Ed websites always end in .gov, so you know you're on the right site. Please stay away from FAFSA.com, because that is a paid website that families are expected to pay, I think, $80 to submit the FAFSA, and that's truly not needed on any level. You may have heard that the FAFSA has gone through some major changes due to the FAFSA Simplification Act, and I'd like to highlight some of these changes with you tonight. I understand a lot of the families on the call are first-time FAFSA filers, and that's great, but I still want to share some of the experience that you'll have and the views that you will see and the terms that you'll read about as you complete the FAFSA. So typically, the federal financial aid application is open October 1 every year. But due to the complex and massive amount of changes that the FAFSA Simplification Act has caused, that the FAFSA is going to be delayed for this year, for the 24-25 academic year. We hope it will come out in early December 2023, but reality tells me it may be late December 2023. So as you're toasting the new year, you might want to try to log on and see if the FAFSA is available. But not to panic, it's going to get back right-sided again and be available October 1, hopefully in future years. One thing that you can do now before midnight of December 31st is complete or create an FSA ID. This is your electronic signature for both the student and the parent. So you can go to studentaid.gov, the website listed there on the screen, and click on create an FSA ID. And I would recommend doing that now and remembering what you used, because this will be the way to log into the federal site to complete the FAFSA and to sign it. And also parents, if you're interested in ever borrowing a Parent Plus loan, this is how you will identify yourself, start the application, and sign a Parent Plus application with your unique parent FSA ID. If you don't create one before, you can create one as you begin filing the FAFSA, but it's always wise to do it a few days before so it has time to process through the federal systems. We ask our U.S. citizens and permanent residents to complete the FAFSA. Our international students do not need to complete the FAFSA. As I mentioned before, it's done every single year because we're going to evaluate a student's demonstrated need every single year with the current financial aid applications. And a nice new change of the FAFSA is it was capped at being able to send it to 10 schools only, and now that has expanded to 20 schools. So we hope that Hamilton is listed on one of your 20. Here's a view of the landing page that you'll see, and I'd like to highlight that you will see 2 academic years available. Currently, you'll probably see the 23-24 because that FAFSA can still be filed, even though most of our students have already done it. But you guys, any incoming freshmen should focus on the 24-25 FAFSA application. Some nuances to share with you with the changes that have taken place in the FAFSA free application for federal student aid form. The student begins the FAFSA and invites their contributor, which is a parent, a step-parent, or a spouse for independent students, to then join in and complete their section of the FAFSA. So as mom and dad or student are sitting at the same table, the student initiates the application, so enters mom or dad's email, and mom and dad will get an email in real time inviting them to join the student's application and complete their section. And for our separated or divorced families, the contributor is the parent who provides the most support in the previous 12 months. It used to be the parent on the FAFSA was the custodial parent, the parent that the child lived with most in the previous 12 months. That is no longer the driver of the parent that's on the FAFSA. So the student will see some questions confirming that the parent on the FAFSA is truly the correct parent with this new process. They will get some guidance on answering questions on who the parent contributor should be. Another key change in this FAFSA cycle and for future FAFSA cycles is that parents and students will not be able to enter their tax return information on the form anymore. They have to use the IRS Direct Data Exchange, or DDX, another acronym in our world. This is a new feature. This was often a change and enhancement that the Department of Ed wanted to work with the IRS to retrieve families' tax return information easily for them, to minimize some stress and to make the FAFSA filing even easier. So that took place through the FAFSA Simplification Act. And now all contributors and students must consent to extract the information directly from the IRS, and no changes will be able to be made as the data has been transferred. And another key important thing to share is if a parent fails to consent to transfer data directly from the IRS, that will prohibit the student from receiving any type of federal student aid. So I just want to highlight that feature that you can no longer enter your information. You have to use the DDX, the Direct Data Exchange. Another few changes to highlight in tonight's session is the result of the FAFSA is to determine, and it's called the Student Aid Index. Used to be called a EFC, or Expected Family Contribution, But that is another big change for the new FAFSA cycle. It is generating the result, a number called the Student Aid Index. And the Department of Ed feels that this is a little bit more appropriate because it truly indicates the student's ability and eligibility for the federal Pell Grant. Many of the changes and revisions of the FAFSA application and the methodology and the terminology is to ease the process of filing for federal student aid, streamline the application, make it more intuitive and shorter, and ultimately increase the number of Pell eligible students. And that's what we're seeing in the early versions and modeling of this. Another key change is the student aid index can be as low as negative $1,500. So our processes are all changing to adapt to this new information. But if you see a negative number as your student aid index, don't panic, that is correct. And you will be informed of the student aid index in a FAFSA submission summary form, an email that is sent to the student with the FAFSA is completely processed from the Department of Ed. Another key change I mentioned earlier is the FAFSA methodology is removing the multiple siblings in college discount. However, Hamilton understands having multiple children in college at the same time is quite expensive, and we will honor that and acknowledge that expense as we determine your family contribution. So why are we having families file the FAFSA? It is because it is determining your student aid index and your eligibility for key federal student aid programs, such as the federal Pell Grant, the SEOG grant, the access to direct loans, the access for a federal work-study award, and other states and state organizations use the FAFSA information to determine their state aid eligibility. So it's a powerful application that garners access to many types of financial aid for our students. The second application that we ask our students that are interested in applying for financial aid to complete is the College Board CSS Profile. You do this online also at cssprofile.collegeboard.org. And this will not incur all of the changes that the FAFSA is receiving. The profile is pretty consistent and it will open up in October 1. There is a fee to complete the profile, but waivers are available and you can contact our office if you need one and if you're eligible for one. We ask our domestic students and our international students to complete the profile for us every year. And there are sections for the students, custodial parents, and non-custodial parents to complete. And we don't have any of that terminology that I mentioned on the FAFSA, such as contributors and invitations to complete. Both parent and student can sign in at the same time and complete the FAFSA, the profile together. So we just talked about a lot of information. We talked about the terminology that we use to determine a student's demonstrated need, the policy that we meet 100% of our students' demonstrated need with very generous financial aid of Hamilton Scholarship and some self-help aid, which consists of a small student loan and campus employment opportunity. So you may be wondering, how do I know if I'm eligible for need-based aid at Hamilton College? And luckily, we have 2 resources for our families to do now. You don't have to wait till October 1 when the profile opens up, or you don't have to wait till New Year's Eve when the FAFSA will probably open up at that time. We have them on our website right now, and they're called the My Intuition and the Net Price Calculator. Again, these are 2 tools where you enter some basic baseline information of family resources, and we will give you an idea of what your contribution will be and your true net price. The My Intuition tool is a little shorter. It only asks about 4 or 5 questions to determine the range of eligibility of need-based aid. But the Net Price Calculator is a little bit more detailed and will ask a little bit more specific questions about your resources in the 2022 tax return year. I ask for your patience as you use these tools right now on our website, because we, as the Department of Ed, is overhauling all their systems and processes. So are we, and so are our vendors. So as our vendors are scurrying to try to adopt these changes in methodology, we're at their mercy a little bit on how fast they can implement them. So the tools on our site today are the best that we have to offer you, and we will be updating them to reflect the changes of the FAFSA as soon as possible. So you may want to revisit them mid to late September again, just to compare and contrast your results. So that basically sums up our presentation for tonight as far as the generous financial aid promise to our accepted students, our domestic first year accepted students and enrolled students, that meeting 100% need, and we meet 100% need of our transfer and international students as well. We are just a little bit more need aware of those applications and student resources. So now we'll open up to questions. John, if we have any questions from our audience.
Yes, we've got plenty, Jan. And first, thank you for sharing your expertise. I know that there's an interesting time in the financial aid world. You mentioned that there are a lot of changes that are taking place with FAFSA and the timeline and how and when that's going to be available. Some changes in terms of how that may impact packaging in different schools. I am seeing in the questions some feedback and appreciation for some of the steps that Hamilton is taking, like preserving the consideration for siblings in college as an example. So go Hamilton. And a lot of great questions as well. Once again, I want to invite folks who have questions to please submit them using the Q&A feature, and we will work our way through the questions that have been submitted. But Jan, one of the first questions that came up, I mentioned that we have a large international population that's joining us tonight. And one of the questions was around fee waivers for the CSS profile. Are fee waivers available for the CSS profile, and are they available for international students?
Yes, and yes, they are available. Please contact our financial aid office at finaid at hamilton.edu, and we will respond with a fee waiver.
Another question that came up was another international student asking about net price calculators and whether there's a net price calculator that works well or better for international citizens.
That's a great question. That's something that Marianne and I ask our vendors often. Unfortunately, there is not a existing international student net price calculator that we can recommend. They're all built for domestic students. We are able to help our Canadian students a little bit more by offering a guide, a little cheat sheet for them to use and read their home T1s and T3s, I believe, and enter the data accurately into our domestic NPC tool. But beyond that, unfortunately, our international students, we direct them to our international page on our website that explains our promise to meet their need and that they need to complete the profile.
Understood. Another thing that you mentioned, another change this year is the anticipated timeline around the FAFSA being available. In prior years, we've come to expect it being available in October-ish. This year, it sounds like it's going to be pushed back a little bit later, December, maybe the end of December. Happy New Year. You got your FAFSA. So there are some questions that are coming up around that timing and our early decision timeline. So
great point.
Just a quick, for those that don't know, Hamilton has an early decision plan, early decision 1, which is for students that know and feel that Hamilton is their tippy top choice. You apply by November 15th, you hear back mid-December, and if you're admitted, woohoo, by the vest. We will see you on the Hill. But if we're talking about a November application and a December decision and the FAFSA timeline, what is that going to look like for our early decision students?
That will not be a problem whatsoever. And I was teasing that the FAFSA will probably open up on New Year's Eve, but our hope is that it will be early December for our families. And we'll communicate that on our website as soon as we have the information available to us. But not to panic for our ED families, because the profile that will be released and available October 1 will give us an estimate of the eligibility for federal student aid with that one financial aid application. So we can use that to project what our students will receive in their financial aid package, including federal, state, institutional eligibility, scholarships, grants, and loans. So again, we have a tool available to us. We don't need our families to complete another tool until the FAFSA opens up. We can just, all we ask that they complete the profile in a timely fashion, and that will give us the information we need to complete and to offer, to create a complete financial aid offer.
Thanks, Jan.
And then when the FAFSA does come out, we ask our families to obviously complete that also, and we will verify and adjust anything that we need to.
Understood. Another question, kind of series of questions that's coming up, is around changing circumstances, changing financial circumstances, maybe a loss of a job or a loss of income in 1 year from the next. How do we think about that? How do we manage that in the initial review and subsequent reviews?
Great question. Yes, we understand that life can change from a prior year information on the profile and the FAFSA. So we invite our families to have a conversation with us, to inform us, email us, call us, Zoom with us. Let us know what is happening in your current world, whether it's a loss of job, a loss of income, added expenses, medical changes. So we can receive that information and review the application and see how best we can serve and help the student now with the proper documentation. So all of that is summed up to say, let us know what's going on. We have an appeal form on our website and offers information on that website about what we consider as a valid appeal request and the supporting documentation that we ask our families to send us. So happy to have those conversations. We understand that it's real, and this can be a stressful process, and we're trying to minimize that stress in all ways.
Thanks, Jan. There's a series of questions around non-custodial parent information, what's required, and if there may be no contact or no relationship with the non-custodial parent, how that is managed.
Happy to speak to that. So in the general terms, we are, as I mentioned, on the total family contribution, that we expect the entire family to use available resources for the student's educational expenses. On the profile, we do request that the custodial parent complete their section and the non-custodial parent complete their section. But in the event that the student does not have any relationship with the non-custodial parent for various host of reasons, we ask for supporting documentation from a third party, from a counselor or clergy, professional doctor, some kind of non-family member, relative, or contact to state the current state of the relationship. And then we will look in to see if we can waive the expectation of the non-custodial parent. But it has to be of some validity. It can't just be, I don't want to contribute. We expect all family members to provide their resources available.
Another kind of category of questions that's coming up is around outside scholarships, and for students that may receive outside scholarships through some sort of non-Hamilton organization, some sort of national organization. How does that play into our needs review?
Right. Yes, we encourage outside scholarships are wonderful, and we encourage our students to seek them, but we do treat them as a resource that we have to count in our need-based aid total award offer. And we replace self-help first with the value of the outside scholarship. So a freshman self-help could be the loan amount of $3,500. They get a $3,500 outside scholarship, and we remove the loan and work study first. It does not reduce the family contribution. We will eliminate self-help aid first, and then if we have to reduce other federal aid contribution, etc., or the Hamilton Scholarship worst case scenario. So it is counted as a resource, and they're helpful in the sense that it removes the obligation for the student to borrow or to work while they're enrolled. So that's a positive. But if we have to go farther than those two resources, we will look to review our contribution levels. And then ultimately, if we have to reduce scholarship, we will.
Understood. There are a couple of other questions that are coming up around different assets and different categories of asset. So we've talked a little bit about income, but in addition, how might Hamilton or maybe I'll expand the question, if different schools do this differently. Things like retirement, 401, home equity, foreign investments. How are these different asset categories managed?
Yep. Well, we do ask families to report and disclose all their available assets, including the home equity in the home equity, the value of any other property that you may own, the business net value, the dollar amount of retirement accounts, the dollar amount of cash and savings accounts, the asset value of any non-retirement accounts. So we ask our families to report all that information on particularly the CSS profile, but it's up to every institution how they evaluate and how they use that information. That's what is called institutional methodology. So depending on our resources and our consideration of these resources are reviewed every single year. So it may not be 100% dollar for dollar of those value of those resources, and it may not be all of them. So that is all the secret sauce, basically, if I would say, of the institutional methodology that we use to determine our own internal scholarship money.
Another category of questions that's coming up is around differences in cost of living and how that may factor into this review process. A family that makes X in one place, that dollar may not go as far in another place. How is that considered in the review?
It is. Great question. And again, that is the value of using the CSS Profile financial aid application, because that baseline formula incorporates where a family lives as far as the cost of living allowances and inflation in that area. So that information is passed along to us and incorporated into determining how much a family can contribute towards educational expenses. So it is evaluated and considered.
Another question that is coming up in a couple of different places is, again, about timelines, and maybe just reiterating or clarifying with some of the delays with FAFSA. Do we at Hamilton expect any sort of delay in admission decisions or aid awards?
No, we don't. No, we don't. We've really shored up all our tools in our toolbox to continue to serve our students accurately and timely. So the profile will open up at the same amount of time it does every single year for the 24-25 academic year, and that is October 1. So families can log in and complete that. We will still request the FAFSA, and we will remind families that it's still not completed, but we understand families can't complete it on October 1, 2, 3. So we have all the information needed that we can continue to evaluate our financial aid award offers for our early decision 1 applicant pool. So I really kind of want limit the stress level of our families regarding ED1, that it's okay just to complete the profile when available, complete the FAFSA when available, and we will communicate that when that time is. And it's a tentative award anyways in our early decision pools until we receive the final tuition and fees for our academic year that are built in our cost of attendance. So we're always reevaluating all these application information just to give the family a final award letter. So, and we will have the FAFSA in time to do that.
Got it. Thank you. Another question that references something we spoke about a little earlier was around early decision. And I mentioned that it's for students that know that they really want to be at Hamilton because for us, it's a binding agreement. You know, you apply, you hear back, and if you're admitted, we expect you to come and we expect you to enroll. We understand that if you are making that commitment alongside a significant investment, that you want to have a sense of what the financial aid is going to look like, you know, what the level of commitment and investment will be. And so, Jan, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, and you know, I can speak a little bit to this as well. If there are more questions around the aid award, you know, more clarity, if it's not perhaps what was expected, you know, what recourse do students and families have?
I think we have two options for our families in that situation. First, we ask our families to use our net price calculators on our website now to get a sense of the expected family contribution level. So you're not surprised terribly much. And then after that, and you get your actual initial financial aid award in early decision cycle. If it's totally not what you were expecting, you can have a conversation with us, and we can see if there's been a change in your family circumstances, your family resources. You can submit a financial aid appeal. You know, there are conversations and the next steps that we can do, but ultimately, it's all needs to be verified with supporting documentation of any changes from the actual 22 tax return information that we have.
And I'll just add that to be crystal clear that our financial aid and the generosity of our awards is as applicable to our early decision students as it is our regular decision students. And you know, as Jan was saying, if for some reason, you know, things don't seem to line up, we will release someone from that agreement and let you enroll elsewhere. I'm really proud to say that in my experience here, I think I can count on one hand the number of times that happened, because we do a really good job meeting our students' need in early as well as regular. So just want to make sure that is clear also. A couple of questions coming up about student employment and how that relates to this. Some of our international students are wondering whether that's an opportunity for them, if that factors into their packages. Some of our, you know, some other folks are wondering, you know, what that student employment looks like, if there's an expectation around hours, you know, over the course of a semester or a week. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So we do award a student employment amount in our aid offer, in our need-based aid offer. We do encourage students to find employment on campus to help with the indirect costs of books and supplies and travel and personal miscellaneous expenses during their time here. So it's a helpful tool to have resources for those events. And it's an opportunity to find a campus employment on during their enrollment here. It's not, we don't assign a job to a student with a work-study award. We encourage them to seek employment through the job fair that happens every beginning fall semester, and all the online portal called Handshake lists all our open positions across campus. Students are welcome to apply through Handshake, and if received interest, they submit their documentation, their resume, have experience with interviewing for the position. So it's a wonderful learning opportunity for students also. And there is no set expectation where you have to work because you have a work study award, you have to work 5 hours a week on campus every week. But it is an amount used to meet need. So if you're choosing not to work, then ultimately you may need to have your own resources instead of employment to meet your indirect costs that you may experience. So it's an opportunity, it's an invitation to find campus employment. They don't have to if they don't want to, and any monies that they earn go directly to them. They do not, the paycheck earnings are not redirected to the campus bill at all. It's all money that the student receives and deposits appropriately and uses for future educational expenses.
Thank you. You spoke a little bit about submitting different forms, the FAFSA, CSS Profile, and then there may be additional information like tax returns and other things that are needed. If there is more kind of information around specific circumstances, maybe medical expenses or other things that are a little outside of the norm, how would that documentation be submitted and received by Hamilton?
Great questions. Well, the beauty is we will list all the necessary documents in the student portal. It'll be their financial aid checklist of any outstanding documents, such as the FAFSA or the profile, or a parent or student 1040, a parent or student W-2, business tax returns. So any additional item that we may discover we need during our needs analysis review, we will email the student. We will reach out to them saying, oh, we will now need this blank document, and we will also add it to their student portal so they can see a current status of all their documents. And you would submit those things through our IDoc service, our College Board IDoc service. So it's a very secure portal to upload these personal financial documents, and they are then passed along to us in a secure portal. So that's how they come into us. Families are welcome to email them those other outstanding, miscellaneous documents like medical expenses or something like that. They can do either path to send it to us.
There's a parent of twins that's reaching out. It may not be the only one here tonight, and we certainly see quite a few in the pool overall. They're asking a question about whether they need one parent ID for both children, or do they need separate IDs for each child?
Great question. The parent ID, the FSA ID is always a fun question. They only need one FSA ID for one parent. So the parent that's going to sign the FAFSA for both children can be the same parent, and then only one parent needs to request an FSA ID. But the two students should definitely have their own unique FSA ID. And as parents, as people create their FSA IDs, it's basic demographic information that's asked, and you need to list a separate and distinct email address for all parties requesting an FSA ID.
Understood. There's a question that's going back to some of the earlier questions about different resources. If families have money in one account, a savings account, a checking account, an investment account, are there kind of standard expectations around percentages that people must pay? Does it vary from family to family? Is it individual? How does that work?
It's changing so much this year. The FAFSA methodology has just been changed dramatically. So I can't even quote you a percentage or number in that anymore. It generally was like a 6% range for student for parent assets. But I can't even say for sure if that's the same dollar amount with the new methodology, and we're learning the new methodology as we speak. So I don't have a pulse on that yet, like I did with the previous methodology that existed since 1965. So along those lines, it is a percentage. There is consideration used for asset protection allowances. Depending on the age of the parent, if they're closer to retirement, the formula may not tap as much of the asset that is disclosed, because they understand the parent may need those monies for retirement instead of educational expenses. So there are built-in allowances for life expenses, savings, emergency savings, retirement needs, other multiple people in the house expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So rest assured, the formula is kind of accurately including those.
Got it. There are a couple of questions around the Pell Grant, and about nearly 20% of our students here at Hamilton receive Pell Grants. And so just trying to understand a little bit more about, what is the Pell Grant? How does it affect the overall financial aid award?
Well, the Pell Grant is a source of federal student aid, and it's for our high needs students. It's free money. It's grant money that never has to be repaid. And the student aid index will determine the dollar amount of the Pell Grant the student will receive for the 24-25 academic year. For example, and this hasn't been determined completely yet, but our highest Pell award right now is $7,395 a year. We assume that's going to stay the same. Maybe it'll go up slightly, but we haven't been told yet. But for example, a 0 student aid index should garner the highest maximum Pell amount of currently $7,395. So, and beyond that, the maximum Pell award amount and the minimum Pell amount, there is a calculated Pell amount. I'm not going to get into the weeds of all the nuance of it, but there are different Pell amounts offered according to the student's student aid index.
Understood.
And let me just add quickly that one of the beauties of all these changes to the FAFSA is that we will have more Pell recipients. More students will now be eligible for a Pell Grant, and the Pell Grant award amounts will increase. So the changes may be a little bit of a headache for the financial aid administrators to implement, but they are all very, very positive for our students, for the end user. The form will be easier. It will be direct data exchange of tax return information. The eligibility will increase. It's all positive for our students.
And Jan, we're approaching the end, so I'm going to actually ask you to shift gears and just think, back to your college search process, and maybe supporting your children through this process. What piece of advice would you give to our students and families as they dive into the college search?
Well, to our students, I would say have active engagement. Take this as a learning opportunity also, but be a partner with your parents as you navigate this financial aid process. Be on the phone, be in the conversation, be in the meeting, so you learn, so you understand how you can assist and help. It could be a new and foreign process for many people in the family, and if you have active engagement, I think that is a real positive as you navigate this new process.
Jan, thank you so much. I want to thank my colleagues behind the scenes as well. We really have appreciated you sharing your time, your insight. Most importantly, I want to thank all of our guests, students and families who are interested in learning more about Hamilton, about financial aid, and what's possible for you here. We don't take for granted your interest, that you're spending a little bit of time with us tonight. And we hope to see you again and again, both at these virtual sessions and hopefully someday on the Hill. So best of luck to all of you in your college search. Thanks again, Jan, my colleagues, and thanks especially to our guests tonight. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.